Ah, the joys of shopping in the modern grocery, an experience to share with the little ones you love. What parent could resist bringing a child to the Mini Maxi Mart, discovering a new and colorful world of merchandise, carefully displayed and awaiting the young customer's thoughtful examination? Each visit to the store brings new meaning to the phrase, supermarket sweep. Yes, it's a proud moment when your son or daughter boldly proclaims his or her purchasing preferences. Congratulations, Mom. This newfound assertiveness is just a taste of things to come.
Have you ever been there? I assure you that I have. In fact, I recently witnessed a similar situation when my wife and I made a quick trip to the supermarket to pick up a few items. And when we arrived, we immediately noticed a woman shopper and her 5-year-old boy that were engaged in this kind of clash of wills. He had apparently demanded that she buy something, and then he threw a classic temper tantrum when she refused. The conflict was still brewing when they reached the checkout counter where they were standing in line. Now, we were standing right behind them, and we were close enough to hear the conversation that was going on between them. And she leaned down to her son and spoke very quietly, and she said, "I was going to give you what you asked for, but there's no way I can do it now. We just don't reward that kind of behavior." But this little lad wasn't going to back off, and he continued to snort and complain. And that prompted his mom to say matter-of-factly, "Do you know what's going to happen when we get home?" "Yes," he said. "Well, what?" she asked him. "A SWAT," he said. "Yep, and if you keep acting like this, it'll be 2. And I tell you, with that, the battle was over. Junior settled down and he behaved like a little gentleman. Now, believe me, I rarely interject myself into these kinds of parental episodes, but this was an exception. This woman deserved a word of praise. And so I said, "You're a good mother." And she said with a smile on her face, "Well, it isn't easy." And I knew she meant it. Now, let's see if we can help make it easier for others who are watching by trying to understand what was going on there. It is very important to distinguish between 2 categories of behavior that should be handled in entirely different ways. Maybe this will help explain the distinction. Suppose little Chris is acting silly in the living room and he falls into a table and he breaks some expensive china cups. Or maybe he loses his books on the way home from school, or he leaves his bike out in the rain, or he spills his milk while sitting at the breakfast table. Now, these are what I call acts of childish irresponsibility, which are just inevitable during the early years because kids are like that. They forget things, they lose things, they spill things, they fall off things, and they eat horrible things. This is just the nature of childhood. And when it happens, it should be handled very gently and with understanding. But there is another category of behavior that is far more problematic. For example, when a child stamps her little foot in anger and tells her mom or dad to shut up, or when a 3-year-old is called and then runs the other way. See, in those cases, something very different is going on. She's moved into the realm of what I call willful defiance. It occurs when the child knows what the parent wants, but she clenches her little fists and digs in her heels and prepares for a battle. Now, willful defiance occurs when the child clearly refuses to accept parental leadership. And when this kind of nose-to-nose confrontation occurs, a firm response is in order. Why? Because the question being asked is, who's in charge here? Now, if a parent equivocates at that moment, a strong-willed child, I guarantee you, will precipitate other battles designed to ask that same question again and again. That's just the way he or she thinks. So what about the little unpleasantness at the mini Maxi Mart? Was it childish irresponsibility or willful defiance? Let's look at the instant replay.
There's Mom coming down the field. Mom is saying something. It's a warning. That's right. Bobby has been warned not to get out of the cart. Let's look at the next play. Bobby makes the pitch. But Mom isn't biting. It's a definite no. Mom had called the plays, but Bobby wouldn't follow the game plan. And the referee makes the call, willful defiance.
Well, the referee made the right call because it was willful defiance. Bobby was challenging the authority of his mom, and she needed to be strong because the behavior represented a direct confrontation with authority. Now, here it is again. Father and son are about to go head to head. Maybe the issue is homework or bedtime or KP duty or whatever it might be. And Dad draws a line in the sand and he says, in effect, I've reached my limit. Cross this line and there are going to be some serious fireworks. But despite these warnings, the perimeter is breached. And what happens then? Well, Dad considers standing his ground, but then apparently he loses his nerve and he wimps out. That was, again, a crucial juncture that will affect the father's ability to discipline his son in the future. Every time you back down or waffle in response to a clear confrontation like this, it becomes more difficult to lead that youngster the next time you're challenged.
Where parents want to be friends instead of being the parent that's in control. A lot of times it's the kid controlling the parent instead of the parent controlling the child.
Have you noticed that children will occasionally disobey their parents for the expressed purpose of testing just how much they can get away with? This is a game that you could call Challenge the Chief, and it can be played with surprising skill even by very young children. One father told me of taking his little 3-year-old daughter to a basketball game, and naturally this kid was interested in everything in the gymnasium except the game. So the father permitted her to roam free, but he did walk her down to the stripe painted on the gym floor, and he told her not to go past that line. And no sooner had he returned to his seat when she went scurrying down to that forbidden territory, bump, 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 and right straight to it. And she stopped at the border, and she flashed a grin over her shoulder at her father and deliberately put one foot over the line. And it was as if she were saying, what you going to do about it? Now, virtually every parent the world over has been asked that question at one time or another. Let me emphasize the point again. When a parent ignores this kind of challenge, something changes in the parent-child relationship. For a particularly strong-willed boy or girl, that early test of parental leadership can grow into a full-blown case of rebellion during the troubled days of adolescence. The ultimate paradox, write this down if you're taking notes, the ultimate paradox of childhood is that boys and girls want to be led by their parents, but they insist that their mothers and fathers earn the right to lead them. So, Mom and Dad, before you pull out all your hair and you wave the white flag of surrender, I do hope you'll consider a better way to handle the situation. Here are 6 straightforward principles that have provided the motivation for these recommendations. First, define the boundaries very clearly in advance. If you haven't spelled them out, then don't try to enforce them. 2, when you're defiantly challenged, respond with confident decisiveness. 3, distinguish between willful defiance and childish irresponsibility. Very important to make that distinction. 4, reassure and teach after the confrontation is over. You can't really communicate to the child when you're both in the heat of the battle. But after a time of conflict, during which the parent has demonstrated his right to lead, and particularly if it resulted in tears from the child, the youngster between 2 and 7 or even older may want to be held and reassured, and probably will. By all means, open your arms and let him come. Hold him close and tell him of your love. Rock him gently and let him know again why he was punished and how he can avoid the trouble next time. This moment of communication builds love and fidelity and family unity. And for the Christian family, it's extremely important to pray with the child at that time, admitting to God that we've all sinned and that no one is perfect. You know, divine forgiveness is a marvelous experience even for a very young child. Number 5, avoid impossible demands. Be absolutely sure that your child is capable of delivering what you require. Never punish a child for wetting the bed involuntarily, or for not becoming potty trained by 1 year of age, or for doing poorly in school when he's incapable of academic success. You know, these are impossible demands that put a child in an unresolvable conflict. There's no way out. And that condition brings inevitable damage to the human emotional apparatus. And 6, let love be your guide. A relationship that's characterized by genuine love and affection is likely to be a healthy one, even though, some parental mistakes and errors are inevitable. Well, that completes our lesson for today. Let me just say in closing that discipline is not just about making rules and enforcing them. It's also about building a respectful relationship through the years. In our next video, we're going to talk about leading children without resorting to screaming and anger. It is possible, as I think you'll see. Thanks for joining us today for Focus on the Family. I'm Dr. James Dobson.